Hello, everyone. My name is Bradley Hailstorm. I'm the founder and president of Lion Wing Publishing. I just wanted to jump on here real quickly to say thank you so much for your support of Where's Blade. Where's Blade has been live on Kickstarter now for about 9 hours, and already it is our most successful Kickstarter to date. We've had some successful Kickstarters before, but already Where's Blade is just blowing away the competition. It's fantastic to see this turnout and to see the enthusiasm for this project. This is a, a project unlike anything we've ever done before, and quite frankly, it's a project that really has never been done before anywhere. Translating and publishing Japanese tabletop role playing games is not a thing that has happened. Retro Japanese TRPGs has not really ever been a thing here in the West, and so when I had this idea of publishing Where's Blade, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to turn out. I didn't quite know what the level of excitement was going to be. I didn't quite know if people would really even understand what it was. I was just kind of hoping that everyone kind of saw the promise and the idea, and saw how utterly compelling and just extremely special Where's Blade is as a game. Not to mention, it's this fantastic piece of history that we get to bring to the West for the very first time. I mean, Where's Blade as an IP has been around since 1986, and then the first RPG box set was released in 1989. So, this has been a journey 40 years in the making, effectively. I mean, Where's Blade was a super popular game in the late 80s and early 90s in Japan. I mean, so much so that it still has a loyal fan base today, which is fascinating to think about an IP that has had that kind of lasting impact and that much staying power, never really reaching beyond its native shores. So, when I came up with the idea of launching our Legends of Japan product line, which Where's Blade is a part of, and it kicks off the entire product line as the first installment, I really wanted to show people what the rest of the world has been missing all along. There are all of these fantastic tabletop role-playing games that were released in Japan before the turn of the century that are just wonderful, wonderful games that the world just doesn't know about. Maybe the super hardcore, the historians, and the folks who have been around in the RPG scene since the 80s maybe have heard of some of these things. They probably heard of Where's Blade. They probably heard of Sword World and Wizardry. But certainly they never had a chance to play them. And so when I created the Legends of Japan line, I thought to myself, okay, if this is going to be a retro line of RPGs, what would be the best book to kick this thing off? Like, what is the quintessential retro Japanese tabletop role playing game that captures a culture in time and also is a really good game? You sort of have to do both for this thing to work. And certainly there are some Japanese role-playing games that came out in the 80s and in the 90s that capture a moment in time in Japan, but they're not necessarily games that have held up super well. Where's Blade, however, is one of those games that, checks both boxes. And so not only that, because Where's Blade was so popular, and because it looks like 80s and 90s Japan, I really thought to myself, like, this has to be it. When I was kind of scouring, doing some research of, hey, if I'm going to do this Legends of Japan line and I'm going to get into retro Japanese RPGs, I've got to come out of the gate swinging. Not only does the game have to be good, but it has to be indicative of this entire product line. So there's a lot riding on Where's Blade. There's a lot riding on it from a gameplay standpoint, like it's got to be a good game. And there's a lot riding on it in terms of it has to work so well that it allows us to launch this larger product line that I have in store for everyone. And I really think that Where's Blade is just the ideal, the perfect game to commemorate this Legends of Japan line. So we've been working on this for a while now. Obviously, we first announced this in March of last year. So a year and a half ago is when we publicly talked about it. Of course, we'd been working on it prior to that. So this one really has been a long time in the making. prior to the announcement trailer at the Lion Wing showcase last spring, this was like a really hard secret to sit on. I was especially excited about this. I didn't quite know if the excitement was going to be reciprocated by, the audience, by, the general population out there who are playing RPGs. But I certainly was excited, and I was chomping at the bit to announce this, primarily because I know how good of a game it is, but also I was just really interested to see, you know, would this be something that people found interesting? And I thought they would. I thought they might. I was hoping they would. I certainly was excited. We announced it, and there was kind of immediate buzz around it. And then we kind of went dormant for a while. We didn't talk about the project again up until April, I want to say, April or May of this year. And so there was a long, radio silence there of, we were busy dealing with our other projects, getting those to market and all that good stuff. And when the time came and it was like, okay, it's time to start talking about this. It's time to get the marketing wheels going. It's time to prep for the Kickstarter. It's time to do everything that comes along with putting a product in the public eye. And this was one of those projects that I've always been very excited to work on in the early goings. And then certainly now, at this point, I'm not in the nitty gritty. I'm not an editor on this project like I have been in many of our past projects, but I have been running oversight of this one, and project management, and making sure, kind of like a traditional producer role, really, making sure that we kind of hit our milestones and we're staying on track, and we're producing the best product as possible. I will say that it's been an interesting position to be in. Obviously, with any of our Japanese role-playing games, we're always in close contact with the designers. You sort of have to be if you expect to translate and publish something that is good, right? Like, you've got to have the designers buy-in, for one. They've got to be into the idea, but then also playing off of their investment in the idea is you got to work really closely with them to make sure that their work is represented in the way that that it needs to be, and in a way that respects all of the hours, all of the days that they devoted to this one game. It's never lost on me how we're taking someone else's work and we're representing it for the rest of the world. Like, that's a huge undertaking. I oftentimes think about, when I'm doing that, like, workloads. Like, designers put so much into their art, into their work. I think about all of the hours that designers had to spend designing, which means there were all of those hours were hours not spent doing other things, and specifically hours not spent with family, hours not spent with friends. There's a huge sacrifice that you make when you're a creative type, and that is to create art. It takes time, and to create art, you've got to dedicate the time to just the art, which means you're not dedicating time to anything else. And so it's always really important for me, as a guy running Lion Wing, to make sure that not only are we representing the game well so that it sells well, of course that needs to happen too, but I want to honor all that went into making that thing a thing. That was especially true with Where's Blade. This was a project unlike anything else that we had undertaken before in the past. It's huge. In fact, it's been such a sprawling project that up until Where's Blade, like, we had never had a historian, on our team. We have translators and editors, and of course we're going back and forth with the designers, with our questions to make sure we're getting it right. But because the Legends of Japan product line, and Where's Blade in specific, part of this whole idea, this concept of what we're doing here with this book is yes, here's the game, but also here's a snapshot of this culture and time that no longer exists. Japan is not Japan of the 1989, and so with that comes a certain degree of responsibility that we haven't had in the past, of making sure that, yes, we're getting the book right, we're getting our translations right, we're play testing, and from a gameplay perspective, everything is working the way it should. But then we also have to do this other part of, hey, how are we capturing history here? How are we representing history here? How do we put this work in some kind of context that makes it make sense. If you just grab Where's Blade and you didn't tell someone that it was a book from 1989, you didn't tell someone that we were trying to do this retro Japanese TTRPG thing, and you said, hey, here's a book, what do you think of it? Immediately they might be like, hey, this is kind of different. This doesn't seem like something that would be made today. And it's because, well, A, it's not, but also, B, for it to work, you've got to have the contextual wrapping that goes around this thing to really put it on the timeline. And the timeline is important when you're dealing with retro anything, but certainly retro games. And so we brought on a historian this time around. We've had a lot more liaisoning, if you will, between the publishing team and the design team than we ever have before. Certainly, we have worked very closely with all of our past designers. Takeda-san from Shin Megami Tensei, the role-playing game, Tokyo Conception, super, super, super involved in that whole process. This has just been like that, dial it up another notch, because there's so much more to dig into here from a book and an IP that's 4 decades old. So, this really was a big undertaking for us. We had never done anything like this before, from the point of reference that I just talked about, but also just from a density standpoint. So not only is this going to be our longest book in terms of page count, but like this is true 1980s, early 1990s role-playing game stuff. It's dense. There's lots of text. There's not huge splash pages. There's not huge art that take up tons of pages. And if you took out all the art, maybe you'd cut off a third of the book. That's not this. That happens a lot in newer releases. This, however, is very much so a product of its time, in that this is edge to edge words, dense lore. Of course, there's tons of art in it. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of art in it, some of which you can see on the Kickstarter campaign page itself. But this is heavy stuff. It's a heavy book, literally. It's crunchy. The system's crunchy. It's unlike a lot of our past games in that it's not focusing on accessibility. A lot of our past games I've chosen to be Lion Wing releases because they can speak to a hardcore audience and a casual audience because they are accessible. They're easy to learn systems. The gameplay mechanics you can learn in just a couple of minutes, and they're really games that are meant to onboard you quickly and get you playing quickly. That's not this. You probably saw it if you looked at the campaign page or watched the actual play. That actual play is 5 hours long. We have never done an actual play that's 5 hours long. Most of our actual plays hover around the hour mark. I think sometimes we might reach the 2-hour mark, but that in and of itself just goes to show that this is a different kind of product for us. It's a different type of project for us, and it's required a different workload, work capacity, work ethic, and communication. We have just communicated so much more on this project because we've had to get so many different things right, not just from the gameplay perspective that we always do, but all of these other things that make this project what it is, that make this project so special. So all of that is to say that this project has been a long time coming. I've been waiting for this to hit Kickstarter for a long time now. It's finally here, and y'all showed up. I mean, really, showed up in big ways. I can't thank you enough for doing that, for making this successful. I think we funded in 9 minutes, which I think is a record for us, if I'm not mistaken. And not only did we fund in 9 minutes, but we overfunded very, very quickly as well. And so it's been a wild 9 hours of being live, and none of that would happen without your all's support, without your enthusiasm, without your belief in this product, without your belief in us to be handling this product and to get it to market successfully. None of these things that we do at Lion Wing work or exist without you all. Some RPGs and some games, you can get them to market and they're going to work just because there's mass appeal, or there's a big publishing name behind it, or there are big designer names behind it, and people just sort of naturally gravitate to it. And you don't really even have to do a whole lot for it to be successful. That's never been Lion Wing's story. We've always dealt with a niche product. We're like a niche within a niche, probably within a niche. And then this one is like a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche. So like there is no coming out of the gates and being successful by default with this product. The way that this has been successful is only because of you guys. It's not like, the mainstream audience has been beaten down the doors asking for a retro Japanese tabletop role-playing game. This has been so special because people have found this thing word of mouth, or maybe you saw the ad on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Maybe you follow us, maybe you've been a backer of our previous things, but like the legwork had to go into it to make it happen, to make it successful, to make this first 9 hours on Kickstarter so successful, and y'all are the ones that did that legwork. So truly, I think I'm always appreciative anytime we're on Kickstarter, right? Like Lion Wing doesn't exist without Kickstarters, and the Kickstarters aren't successes without you all. But like this, especially because it is such a unique product, like I'm so very grateful and thankful for you wanting this thing and for allowing us to make this thing. Lots of conversations been happening in our Discord today. Lots of comments on the page, which I love. I love user engagement. Oftentimes, like with some of our past RPG Kickstarters, certainly there's always comments, there's always engagement, which is fantastic. But usually it's not to this degree so quickly. And so I can tell, when there is that level of interactivity between us and folks who are backing the product, that usually means we got something special here. So to see all the chatter happening in different forms has just been really heartwarming, validating, frankly, and also just allowing me to breathe a sigh of relief. Like, okay, here we are. We're here and we're doing it and it's working and people want it. So now the fun begins. We've got another 22 days, 22 and a half days on Kickstarter. This is the longest Kickstarter we've run since 2018. Our first Kickstarter ever. I was a fool. I didn't know like anything. I ran like a 30 something day campaign. Ever since then, though, we've always run 16-day campaigns. This time we're running a 23-day campaign. Why is that? Pretty simple, really. Most of our Kickstarters, before they go live, we have like a pre-launch sign up page, and most of the time, our pre-launch sign up page sits around 1,000 to 1,500 folks waiting for the Kickstarter to go live, to be notified when the campaign jumps off. This time, though, we had 5,100. So I thought, hold on a second, there's something here. There's a level of anticipation and interest in this product like there hasn't been in the past. Like, let's run this one a little bit longer because people were signing up, up until this morning, wanting to be notified of this thing and when it went live. And so clearly, I wanted us to stay on Kickstarter a little bit longer this time, just because I think the product demands it. I think the product is interesting enough. Sometimes you don't want to run too long of a Kickstarter because you get sort of like that mid-campaign slump, where like nothing's happening, very little activity, not a ton of backers, that kind of thing. And you want to avoid that if you can, if you're a creator, just because like so much of a Kickstarter success relies on momentum, frankly. Which is why we haven't done anything beyond a 16-day campaign until now. But this time it's like, no, this is different. And you guys have shown that this one's different. So that's it. I just wanted to jump in and show my face and thank you myself. Yeah, I can type out an update, and I will type out an update, and we will be posting updates with regularity throughout the campaign's life. But I thought jumping on and showing my face, talking to you directly, it's the least I could do, quite frankly. It's the least I could do. So you will get campaign updates probably once every other day, once every 2 days. I don't know exactly, if it'll be every 2 days like it has been with our past campaigns, but certainly it's going to be multiple times a week. So you're going to get various updates. We are also going to be revealing our stretch goals here shortly. I know many people have asked about those. We've got those planned. Quite frankly, I didn't quite know what the the launch was going to be. And so I didn't want to commit to a stretch goal just right out of the gates like I normally do, just because this is such a unique and different kind of product. I was like, I just need to see what's going to happen before I even begin to think about, talk about, show off stretch goals. But clearly, it's time to do so, and we're going to. We have a lot planned out, and so hopefully you'll like them. I think we've got a nice diversity of different type of stretch goals. I think we've got something for everyone in the stretch goals, which will be fun. So again, my name's Bradley. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the updates and in the comments, because most of those comments, it's me. I'm talking to you. So all right, until next time, take care.